It's 4:30. Greetings, everyone. It's 4:30. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That would be entertaining.
Actually, I know a number of you here for probably the second item, which is the talking about the urine diversion. Maybe a lot of you are here to talk about the update on the intermunicipal agreement for Wacoits Bay. But if the board will allow me the leeway, I want to take care of a couple of the easier ones really quick and just get them off the list so that we don't get so deep into discussions that we're pressed at the end. So with that, I'm going to stay with the number one, the update on the watershed permit notice of intent application progress. Amy Lowell is with us tonight. Amy has got the point on some of this, if you will. We're on the agenda with the selectmen in a week, Monday night? Monday night, we're on the agenda with the selectmen, and Amy has put together a memo that's internally getting finalized to go off and basically saying we are going to do notices of intents in January and keep the process moving. Is that reasonable summary of where we're at? Just no changes from before. I'd like to take item 3 if I can, out of order. Can I get a motion to take item 3 out of order?
Yes, I so move.
Seconded?
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Very straightforward. We took the vote of this committee to the selectmen 2 weeks ago, I think now. Pretty short money out of the nitrogen offset, AFC money, to do continuous monitoring. Interestingly, I got a call from the Air Force Center for Environmental Excellence today asking me what this article is all about. And once I explained to them, they were like, oh, that's fine, they were good. So somehow or other, they're keeping very close eye on the Water Quality Management Committee. Tom, turning to you, Amy's here, she can fill us in. But we've had some conversations ongoing with Mashpee
Yes.
and/or Sandwich regarding the intermunicipal agreement for Wacoit Bay.
I gave Kristen a couple of slides, I think, a real
Okay.
quick summary. And
Well,
I'll just,
actually, can I have?
Can I stay here instead of going to the lectern?
You can do whatever you want. A motion to take item 4 out of order.
yes.
Okay, second?
Second.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we had a very, I thought, pleasant meeting, and Peter and Amy are welcome to correct me on any missteps here, with representatives from Mashpee and Sandwich. And I put this slide up just to give people that aren't participating in this program some idea of the complexity of what we're dealing with, trying to reach an agreement with 2 other towns as to who's responsible for what nitrogen loading there is of Wacoit Bay. There's 48 separate subwatersheds in Wacoit Bay called out there and coded and listed all down the side. That's the main point of that slide. And if we go to the second slide, this is a quick summary. All 3 towns are doing the same thing. We're filing the notice of intents that we're going to follow through with watershed permit applications. So we're all on the same track there, which helps. The actual amount of nitrogen loading and its sources have been pretty thoroughly modeled by GHD, our Falmouth consultant. And there's very good agreement among all 3 towns as to the distribution of the load. For those of you that aren't on the inside with this, the unattenuated load is what's actually put in the ground somewhere within the watershed for a given body of water. And the attenuated is what's actually delivered to the body of water that we're concerned with, whether it's a freshwater pond or an estuary or something else. Some of the nitrogen is dealt with. Nitrogen headed towards Wacoit Bay may spend time in a pond, and while it's in that pond, it's absorbed by algae that are living there. So that's why those numbers usually on the attenuated side are lower. But there's been remarkable agreement from the get-go between the 3 towns as to the responsibility, proportional responsibility for cleaning things up, and maybe even headed towards the actual paying for the cleaning up. Now, in terms of a timeline, All three towns are pretty much agreeing with the intermunicipal agreement that's already been drafted and circulated among the three towns. Mashpee and Sandwich are pretty much ready to go right away on it, but we ask for time to have our town manager, who has looked over it, and our town council, who is in the midst of looking over it, going through it right now before we respond back. We're scheduled right now for a follow-up meeting on the 13th, 2 weeks from this afternoon, in Mashpee again, I assume. I think we'll meet in the same place in Mashpee Town Hall. And I'll take,
Could you, like, just for quick summary, who from Falmouth is part of your little working group?
Peter McCarty, who's the director of DPW, McCartney, I'll get it right in a minute. It's Scottish, they say things funny over there. And Amy Lowell, and myself, and then two representatives from Sandwich was, is it the assistant town manager or the town manager? And their health agent. And Mashpee was one of the select board members remotely from Florida. Why you'd want to be in Florida when you could be in Mashpee, I don't know. But anyway, that's where she came in from. And then two other representatives of Mashpee Municipal, and I can't remember their names.
Town manager there as well.
Yeah.
Natural resources.
Yeah, Natural Resources Director, Ashley was actually running it.
And just for those that are watching or listening, while we have to do our own watershed permits for each one of our water bodies, when we share that watershed with an adjoining community, the regulations require there be some form of intermunicipal agreement
Yes.
in place. And we've got ones associated with Bourne, up
Yep.
at Magansett Harbor and Squatigue Harbor, and this one, Wacoit. And in both cases, we've been reaching out, and there's no controversy or whatever, it's just doing the work.
Right, and in our case, those of you that have been following our progress, we've moved progressively eastward from downtown Falmouth and Woods Hole. So Wacoit Bay on the timeline is some years down the line for us. But I think we're going to try to move this through pretty quickly just to fit in with Sandwich's and Mashpee's goals of getting into it right away.
Thank you, Tom. Now we're going to move on to item 2, which is, go ahead.
Can there be comments on
Oh,
that?
yeah, sure.
That's great, Tom. I would love to see at a future meeting a map that shows this in a more meaningful way. For instance, it doesn't seem intuitive that it would be the same percentage for each sub-estuary of Wacoit Bay. I mean, some of the sub-estuaries are completely
Yes,
controlled by Falmouth, completely surrounded by Falmouth land. And
Right.
some of them completely surrounded by Mashpee land.
right, this is the
And so-
big picture approach for the whole estuary, and it's
So
going to be
Steve-
quite different.
So,
I'm asking for some detail that would be inappropriate tonight. but
Right.
At
so
some
if I
point, that's the only
can,
way
if
to
I can-
understand it. Yeah.
so later this evening, we're going to talk about Bourne's Pond watershed. It's my intention to utilize this meeting, these meeting times going forward, to do watershed by watershed. So when we get to Wacoit, we will get much more detailed than Wacoit when we do the Wacoit watershed,
Right.
okay?
Steve,
So,
I'll also say there is a more detailed memo that provides backup on this.
yeah.
A more detailed sub-watershed by watershed.
I actually got the idea for this question from reading the material for Bourne's Pond, where someone, maybe you, pointed out that what you do in one sub-estuary is unlikely to affect another.
This is why we're gonna go through watershed by watershed for a while, get everybody up to speed. It's my desire to get this entire board and anybody else that's watching, not on a global thing about 14 estuaries all lumped together, but estuary by estuary, what's unique about them, what's particular about them, what's the landscape like, what's the usages of the space and everything else. So we're gonna do Bourne's tonight for the first one, see how it goes. Any other questions from the board about the intermunicipal agreement? Any questions?
Sorry, I just had one question. Did you mention the timeline that Falmouth is reviewing the IMA?
Well,
Like, is there?
for us, this is off years from now, because we're moving too slowly for some people from west to east. basically along Route 28 in terms of dealing with the problems as they come up. But Wacoit Bay is definitely a big project for us.
No,
And
I
it
just
is
meant
coming-
the actual signing of the agreement.
Oh, no, I think as soon as our Falmouth people pass on it, I think we're gonna sign off on it. It just hasn't been a rush item. We started these discussions almost pre-COVID, and then it sort of went on the back burner.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a specific timeline, but if the draft is, there's not a lot of disagreement on the
Right.
draft. I think we're likely to see that everybody agrees on the draft. Well, each community, as it says earlier, are gonna do their notice of intent. Then the question is, after the notice of intents are filed, how does it fit together for each of the communities to file their watershed permits and making sure that the agreement is finalized before the first watershed permit has to go in?
Makes sense.
Okay?
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at with that one. Does that sound right, Amy? Yeah, okay. Any comments from the general public or Amy or anybody else on? Okay, good. All right. With that, let's move on to item 2, which is this board's taking up a proposal that was submitted to us a little while back. A working group was put together on this, and we'll hear first from the working group. I want to frame this for everybody. There's no intended vote tonight. It doesn't say take a vote on anything. This is a first step at delving into the proposal we received, what it says and what it doesn't say. And I have reserved time for our next intended meeting on December 6th to continue the conversation on urine diversion. We get to some understanding, keeping in mind that this board does not necessarily set policy or vote hard, concrete things. We are a board that recommends to the Board of Selectmen action. So we're working our way through this to put a package together to take to the selectmen at some point in a timely fashion for some action that may or may not be acted upon at Springtown meeting, depending upon how the Board of Selectmen wants to see this matter and or act on it. So I know some of you want it all done today, as do, we have that with many things, but we need to work through the process and make sure that it's complete. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Ed, who's been in a working group. Can you identify who's been in the working group to look at all this stuff, Ed?
Sure. The working group was formed several months ago at Steve's request, and he asked me to organize this and keep it moving forward. It consisted of myself, Tom Duncan from Water Quality Management, Doug Brown, Selectman, sitting over there, George Hulfelder, who has been working in this topic. He's part of MassTech now. He was part of Barnstable Town Government, DPW, and Matt Patrick. So that was the working group of 5. We have met several times. There have been a lot of email discussions back and forth, individual members doing a lot of digging and research. I can't imagine how many hours I personally have put into this. It's an extremely complex topic. The nuances are just immense. Devices, utilization of the urine, what's in it, how do you handle it, how do you collect it, how do you organize a program like this, how do you fund it? So there's a lot of topics that we got involved with, and I try to summarize briefly where we are and what we are recommending. As Steve said, Water Quality Management will make a recommendation at some point, hopefully in the not-too-distant future, to the Board of Selectmen and then town meeting. The purpose of the working group was to formulate some initial ideas and positions to present to Water Quality Management. So this tonight is our first shot at doing that. So with that, our group was formed to evaluate the proposal dated October 23 of this year. This was from MassTech, and it's several pages of detail, and it was very well organized, very well put together. We asked them to expand the original proposal to a group of 75 houses over a 3-year period, because what we have to get is, to a 4-year period rather, what we have to get for DEP to get approval of this is a minimum of 50 for 3 years of data. Now, DEP has said to us in an earlier meeting that they feel we can go right to a provisional approval as an IA system. What would that mean? That would mean urine diversion systems would be considered the same as any other IA. People that might be at some point going forward mandated to install an IA system, which can cost anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 or more, plus ongoing maintenance and testing requirements, might, if this works, have the option to use urine diversion in conjunction with their conventional Title V. Much lower cost, probably in the order of magnitude of $10,000 or less, and not have to put in the IA at the 4 to 5 times the cost. To get there, we've got a long road. We've got a lot of approvals from State Plumbing Board and from DEP, and then the long process of data collection and analysis. So with that, we looked at different issues, program guidelines from DEP. We talked about alternate funding sources, types of devices that might be eligible for this program, and what kind of data we would want, and very importantly, who would oversee this for the town of Falmouth? Who would manage the program for ongoing work, the collection, the analysis, the funding, very important. So that's a hurdle that, we think the selectmen, based on something from Water Quality Management, will have to determine in the near future. Our recommendations and findings are as follows. The program, as recommended by MassTech, and we agreed with this, would provide subsidies for up to $10,000. It would be structured, and this was our analysis, based on Falmouth's history roughly 10 years ago when they did a similar program. They did the $10,000 subsidy as a forgivable loan. It would be fully forgiven if the participant completed a minimum of 3 years of data collection. And it would only be granted to those houses who did a full conversion. If they have 1 bathroom, they convert the 1 bathroom to urine diversion. If they have 2, 3, or 4, all would have to be converted. Very controversial topic, a lot of debate back and forth in our working group, and that is the consensus we came to unanimously, that to get a full subsidy, you would be required to convert all bathrooms. And you look at that and say, wow, big expense in a big house. Yes, big commitment from a house with 1 bathroom. Less of an expense, but a major commitment. Altering lifestyle, altering convenience that they're used to. It's a major commitment versus a larger house. Oh, we'll convert 1 and we'll use the others. There's no way to monitor that effectively and come up with good, meaningful data, because our goal is to get enough data that DEP will say, you know what? Urine diversion qualifies as an IA system, and we would get some TMDL credit for using a urine diversion home. What's that mean? It helps us to reduce that TMDL, maximum daily load of nitrogen that an estuary is allowed to have, by using that instead of an IA system or a sewering, which we know is going to be very expensive and very long-term. So it's another tool in our toolbox to meet our TMDL goals, just like permeable reactive barriers, like shellfish, like sewers, all the other technologies that this board and the town has been working towards. So that's a very important point I think we want to make, that the reason is to get that DEP approval for this to be an IA system, get TMDL credit. Now, we would be only giving subsidies, again, if this is all approved by town authorities, to those houses that convert. The support would include an initial pump out of the septic tank so that you start with, let's call it a clean tank, and then you know how you test it before you pump it, you know what the ongoing state is at then, and then you test it during the program over the 3 years to see how does that compare to the original state prior to urine diversion. Again, very important data for us and for DEP to see how much reduction in normal use over an extended period for that household based on their historical status when we started the program. So we would cover that pump out, periodic testing of the tank during the program, and another important expense is transport of that urine collected off-site. Current proposal says that would be collected by MassTech and be transported to MassTech for testing and eventual disposal. That eventual disposal probably would be to our wastewater treatment plant, because there is no other option right now. A lot of organizations worldwide are exploring what to do with collected urine, but there is no accepted conventional way to do it. So during this test program, it'll probably all end up eventually at the water treatment plant. But that's an expense that people are already incurring that are using this in other areas. What do you do with this urine, and you want to get it off-site? Again, DEP doesn't want you spreading it back on the ground at your home. Defeats the purpose. You're putting the urine into the watershed again. Additional things covered would be the evaluation of the house. Again, very important. What technologies might fit the individual home based on its construction, based on the occupants? So a professional would go in, evaluate the house, and say what could fit, what can't fit, where would you store this urine, where would you put a storage tank. Number two, the best data would require, as I said, hard-plumbed urine diversion toilets in all bathrooms. Devices could include urine diversion toilets, and unfortunately, there's only a couple available worldwide. One that was used in the program 10 years ago is no longer available. It has been discontinued. They no longer make it. So there's really only one good that looks like a similar to what you're used to household fixture. We're looking for others, and the search continues. One we found is being used in Europe, but it's instead of conventional toilet, discharge comes out the bottom. This is a wall-mounted fixture, and the discharge goes through the wall. So it would require major reconstruction of the plumbing, or best suited for a new installation, new construction. So urine diversion toilets, urinals, because, boy, you got straight urine, nothing else going down except maybe some flushing water. Composting toilets with urine diversion. There are composting toilets that drop the solids into a tank, and the urine goes through a separate direction and is collected. Composting toilets with collection of what's called liquid tea. And this is something George is very familiar with, where everything goes into a tank, the solids slowly decay, and average conditions, in his experience, you get a couple of 100 gallons of this tea-colored liquid, which is heavily urine and some other stuff. That would go for testing and collection. Portable devices, like a lot of people are in favor of, whether it's a 5-gallon bucket or something that's called a cubie, would be supported only in this fashion. Collect an initial pump out of the tank, again for that baseline data, collection of the urine, and then again, it's an important expense to be avoided, testing and data recording. This data would probably not be useful for the DEP project initially. That DEP would want all urine collected in a hard device. Portable ones, they've said, probably not a good idea. They also have said incinerating toilets would not qualify in the study that they're looking for. But that extra collection of urine and data from the portable devices would be useful, we feel, as a working group, useful to the town and other communities going forward to determine what urine, what nitrogen that's in that urine can be taken out of watersheds, particularly around a freshwater pond, and help remediate the pond conditions. So we feel it would be a worthwhile investment for the town and whoever else participates in the funding to learn from that, and worth committing funds and resources to collect that data as part of this overall urine diversion study. Those houses using portable devices would have to provide a minimum of a 50-gallon storage tank. You can't keep having MassTech come, oh, I got 5 gallons, come get it. They would want to have a minimum of 50. There's logistics involved in this. We would also be wanting to get data from these, all houses really, including those with hard-plumbed or portables. How many people live in a house? How often are they there? Is it seasonal occupancy? Is it weekends? Is it full-time year-round? How many people? Their gender? we would do an analysis of the urine by content, what's in it, and by quantity. How many gallons or liters are being accumulated on a monthly, yearly basis. Again, useful data in the hard plumb fixtures, if I will, for the DEP to say, look, here's how much nitrogen we're hoping to get out of the estuaries. Give us some MDL credit. And for further analysis to our need to clean up our ponds, we would have some darn useful data. How much urine can you get out, and how much nitrogen is that bringing out of that pond, or river, or stream? There's only a few devices that meet the program requirements, and we're still searching for more, interfacing with various organizations that have some experience with this, who they're using. The state wants to see devices that are already approved in other jurisdictions. Real problem. Other nations, other states, other jurisdictions don't have these programs. It's kind of a unique thing in the US of A, where a plumbing board has to approve a device before it can be used in your home sanitation. There are houses, what alternate funding sources could include, and again, these are things we've been researching and people are reaching out to. It could be federal, state, county grants. The Cape Cod Commission has a program called Delta Direct Local Technical Assistance. The town of Falmouth has used grants from that in the past to do the Davis Straits study some years ago. So that is a source of some funds potentially for this. There are houses that already have urine diversion in them in Falmouth. Some are holdovers from the original program 10 or 12 years ago. They could also be part of this program, as long as they meet the defined requirements. That gives us another couple of participants that are already experienced in urine diversion, and they would be provided with the same resources of an initial pump out, testing, data collection, because most of the folks that have these systems also have a Title V system. They've got a tank and a leach field, so the benefit of pumping that out, give us a clean baseline data of what's in their tank normally and what will be in there going forward, will be useful, and it'll help those people with their ongoing costs. Finally, the group does recommend that the select board appoint a new freshwater pond, river, stream advisory committee, similar to water quality management, perhaps, but the mission of this committee is the estuaries that are under state decree to clean them up, or else. And the or else is those IA systems for some 13,000 odd homes in Falmouth that aren't in the sewering plans. Those people should we not succeed in our estuary plans, that's what's going to happen. And that's why town meeting approved what they did earlier in the month. We're going forward with the sewering plans. But this program can help all of those other houses, and it can help us in our efforts for sewering to minimize the need to go further to get to our goal. By getting some TMDL credit for this further up in the estuaries and the upper reaches, it will help in the overall goal. So, but we recommend that the select board form a committee to study the ponds, the rivers, the streams, study their health now, and what, if any, remediation might be required. And I think that's key, because as we look at the overall problem of Falmouth, it's not just those saltwater watersheds and estuaries, it's the freshwater too. It's not getting enough attention, and we feel this would be a worthwhile program going forward and a worthwhile advisory board. The task of that group is very large. The task of this group is extremely large, as you've seen in some of the earlier things we talked about tonight and what we will discuss going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. To the members of the board, we got a proposal a while back. The outline of the tasks in the report has not changed much. The change, the most recent proposal we got was more locations, a longer period of time, so that affected the pricing. I'll entertain any comments or questions from members of the board, and then I'll go to the audience. I had at least two groups reach out to me ahead of time and said they wanted to speak, so I'm going to recognize them first, since they already asked to make a comment or whatnot. As I said before, more than willing to carry this on into other meetings, so don't feel this is your only opportunity to express yourself as we're sitting here. Any reaction or comments from the board? I'll start from your end.
Sure. I just had one clarifying question. You mentioned that it'd be tested for nitrogen concentrations, but are they also going to look at phosphorus in that?
Oh, yes, yes, there'd be a detailed chemical analysis of that urine, and MassTech, has some pretty good expertise in this. And, one of the things I don't think I did mention is, right now, the number that they're looking at for this program is about 1.5 million. So,
Tom?
Well, I brought up one idea that the committee itself didn't think too much of, but I think it could be important here. We've got an absolutely major hurdle, I think, financially and behaviorally and everything else, of asking people to be either all in or all out in terms of replacing, retrofitting, whatever it takes to move to this. And I think that we could offer some people a middle ground that would not be nearly as expensive, which would be either the disabling or the removal of fixtures from their house. That would mean later, if you're trying to sell a house and someone says, I don't like that idea at all, it would not be a big deal to come back in and reinstall fixtures. And I just would like to put that out as an idea to the general group, because it would be a major cost saving for some people, I think.
You're suggesting that as long as they were functionally just one bathroom.
Right, yeah.
If I can, at one point I thought we did a little GIS mapping of the number of bathrooms.
Yes, we
Right.
have that, yeah.
Can you comment to that?
well, Kristen got really good at analyzing assessor data, which tells you how many bathrooms are in a house, and overlaying that with the GIS maps that show where houses are and where they are in a watershed. And it was about 39% of the houses in the Great Pond watershed had only one bathroom. Then there were the 2-bathroom or the bath and a half folks and everything else. But, so that's a smaller subset than the hundreds of houses that are there that are potential users of this.
Yep.
So it might, in some cases, limit participation. But again, what I said earlier is, somebody's got 2 or 3 bathrooms, it's a major expense to either, Tom's idea of disabling the others, removing the fixtures, or converting them all, versus the commitment and the cost that the guy with just 1 bathroom has to make. That, oh boy, I'm all in. That, I think, has to be emphasized versus, well, I got 2 and I only want to convert 1. Well, that's nice, but that's a lesser commitment than the all-in guy and the one thing. And remember that there are 13,000 odd households in the community that can participate and might be interested in this. So there is a large population of potential participants to get to we're looking for 75 because we need 50, so over the 3-year period, people might move on, sell their house, move out, decide to drop out. We are also leaving the door open to surrounding towns, limited to those that abut Falmouth, Mashpee, Bourne, and Sandwich, to participate. And there have been some interested citizens already reaching out to Kim Comart and the people at the Pond Coalition to, hey, we want in. They would be required to fully fund their participation, either from their own pocket or with some town funds or however, once all of the funding is washed out. So,
You have more comments, Tom?
No, that was my
Can I
main.
comment on Tom's comment?
You can comment on Tom's comment.
Why did the working group not like your idea? I believe your idea was used 10 or 12 years ago when the composting toilets and so on were
Right.
evaluated.
Well, my first
And I don't
thought,
see how you could prevent it. I mean, you could, if I wanted to, I could finagle it. I could disable my bathrooms before you got there and say, look, I only have 1 bathroom. These others are studies. And there's no fixtures in them. You couldn't disqualify me for that.
no.
So your thing is automatically implementable.
I would think it would be one more option, and anything we can do to encourage participation in this program is gonna be good, I think. So I just put that out as an idea where someone could, at a lower level of financial and other commitments, could participate.
If I may, I found the exact data sheet that Kristen put together. In the Great Pond watershed, there are 2,693 properties, 2,693. 800 of them, about 30%. I was wrong when I said 39. It's about 30% have only one.
Kristen, is this for the upper watershed even the lower portion of the watershed?
I think it was everything north of 28.
North, right, so
Yes,
this, I just
yes.
want to clarify, it's north of,
Not the entire watershed.
yes, not the entire watershed.
Yeah,
North
it
of
it
28.
doesn't
Not in the-
include the
in the
areas that are
proposed
in the
sewer.
North
sewer
of 28.
planning.
It's
It's
north
the
of
upper,
28.
yeah, north of
Okay,
28,
just-
thank you.
Just want to be, yep.
So then 232 had 1.5, 1,115 had 2 bathrooms, and then the other numbers were, 3 or more bathrooms. So,
Well, you're hearing from this committee about things that you may want to revisit as you move
Well,
along, okay?
yeah,
So I just,
yeah. I mean, it was Tom's minority idea, but the consensus of the board was, it'd be difficult to enforce, police, and monitor, and dilute the value of the data we are trying to attain. Because again, we've got to remember, our goal is
Yep.
DEP approval.
You're up next, John.
I had a question about allocation of funds. So my understanding is that recently the selectmen appropriated $80,000 to design a pilot program. And to me, that's a different thing than what we're talking about tonight. So that really is money that was allocated to hire a consultant to go out and they provide the inspection services to go to houses and say, this is what we think would be involved if you were to join the program, and really to design the pilot program. And it seems to me that's a really important piece of this program. In other words, if with that $80,000, you're going to need to design the program that will contain the 50 participants that will meet the criteria the DEP has set out for us. And then we'll come back to the proposal to do the actual science, which is what we're chatting about now, which is the proposal from the test center.
That's essentially correct, John, and my understanding is that, Amy, you've been designated as the person to follow through on that, the initial, in other words, this committee's said it's a good thing to try to identify who could participate in the program and what would be involved. The selectmen appropriated some money out of the AFSI funding, I believe, at the time. And now, I think the assistant town manager has said, it's not this board anymore. It's now inside wastewater, is that correct?
We should talk more about it, but my understanding was that the committee needs a staff person to administrate things. The committee can, on its own, it would be very difficult to go out to get requests for proposals, to sign contracts, to pay bills. So that would come through the wastewater division, through me, for all of this.
Yeah.
So my understanding was that the 80,000 was sort of seed money to start this program, and that that's not under my jurisdiction, that's the same. I'm supporting the committee in this, urine version.
If I may.
I'm gonna just, so we have 2 selectmen here. I think at some point we need to work out sort of who's in charge and who's gonna administer and do things. I don't think we can do it in this room right at this moment. That's why I kind of brought it up, to figure out this money that's been appropriated. We know what we wanna do with it, now we gotta figure out who's doing it and how it gets done.
And that was ARPA funds that were allocated.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
To John's comment, in the detail of the Mass Tech proposal, there are line items and discussion about things that are in that $80,000 proposal that Kim and the Falmouth Pond Coalition had put together and the selectmen funded. So that there is some overlap, and it's primarily the seed money, as Amy said, is to start the program, kind of kick it off, outreach to potential participants, a marketing approach, a public education portion, and try to get support and understanding in the greater community of what this is, why it is, and what it would mean to participate, and do some of that initial survey work that you mentioned, John, of a household, so that the larger amount MassTech proposal has that same kind of activity in it, but this is jump-starting it, and let's get rolling, because this is gonna take a long time to put together and start. But part of the $1.5 million roughly included some of what the 80,000 did. But it's a outreach, marketing, education primarily.
Not to actually design the pilot program. My understanding, and again, I don't know what the selectmen were thinking of, but I sort of looked at that $80,000 as a way of actually designing and putting together the pilot program. In other words, go out into the community, identify the people who are interested, survey their houses with a consultant, and then, so that the people had some idea of what they were potentially signing up for. I think that's something which we really need to clarify. What exactly is that money going to do for us?
Right, it is gonna do, well, it was designed of, and Kim had submitted at one of these meetings in October 25th, actually, the breakdown of what it was. And yes, consultation for up to 75 houses to assess the feasibility, et cetera, et cetera. The basic outline of the program, duration, and what was gonna be done by MassTech was in the MassTech proposal. This breakout for the 80,000 details just what you're saying, correct. But it's not, the design of the program and its methodology started with that multi-page MassTech $1.5 million thing, and that would be the ongoing budget. This is the kickstart money.
So I'll make a suggestion, since I've suggested that we're gonna have things up beginning on December 6th and roll out
Yes.
from this. I'm making a note that we should clarify at the December 6th meeting who's on first relative to this Kickstart piece, what the objectives of the Kickstart piece are, and how it segues into the long program, rather than trying to do it
Tonight, we can't.
tonight, okay? Okay. Good point, John, thank you. You have additional comments? Okay.
Me?
Yeah, I'm working from left to right.
I didn't know
because
if you were talking to John or me.
You're Steve, he's John.
Two things. The first one, on this, what we were just discussing, it seems eminently reasonable to me that you use the 80K, as John said, to seriously try to attract participants. If you attract them, A, you're that much ahead of the game. B, you have them to talk to while you refine phase 2. And C, if you don't attract them, you save $1.6 million.
Well said.
Sorry, I know some of you didn't want to hear that. I also have a nitty-gritty technical question, which maybe you want to save for later.
No,
But-
I've
but
got
I-
10 questions up.
This is on the technical part of it. I picture somebody in some kind of tank truck, whatever is the least expensive way to do it, either somebody from the test center with their homemade tank truck with a tank in the back of a pickup truck, or a septic hauler that you hire, who goes to these houses, takes out a small grab sample and puts it in a jar, not unlike when you go to a physician, and measures the volume of the rest of it as they're pumping it into their tank truck. They then can go to multiple houses in the same trip, do the same thing, take, with no pasteurization and no fixed tank at the test center that you have to buy, they dump 98% of it at the wastewater treatment facility, because there's no other place for it to go right now. They take the little jars to the test center, where the test center tests them, which is why it's called the test center, among other things. And so I simply don't understand why there's a need to store and pasteurize bulk amounts of urine there. If you're saying you're looking for customers, you find that if you have a decent business plan, you have some idea who your customers are before you build your manufacturing plant. That's all I want to say. Amy, want to come? See?
It's been said a couple of times that the urine from this project will go to the town's wastewater plant. I think we should clarify that with Mastech. Their proposal does not say that. I had assumed that all of it was going to Mastech, and they're affiliated with the wastewater treatment facility on the base. So I assumed that was, that's where it was going. It's not,
We do need
we
to-
can work it out either way, but we do need to know if that's part of the plan and evaluate it.
No, we need to clarify, when the verbal conversations we had with the Mass Tech Center a couple of times, I think you were there, Amy, was they're connected to the base, they regularly discharge to the base different things that they're working with up there, but that, to the extent that we go out of this, 3 or 4 year phase that we're going into right now, and suddenly we're going to have a lot more homes participating, it's a real item to figure out what happens with the urine at that point, so, yeah.
The devil's in the
My understanding
details.
is for the pilot, it was going to Mastech.
Yeah, we need to clarify that. That was my sense too. What they want to do with the urine, once we sample it and collect it for our measuring needs, I think they may have other
Oh,
intentions.
I totally agree with what Amy said, but that's completely independent of what I'm saying. It's got to go to some treatment facility.
Yeah.
I don't care which one, that's a step, and obviously it should be agreed on. Another thing in that same ballpark that should be agreed on is, after the 3 or 4 years, if the town, the participants should be aware of, that after the 3 or 4 years, if the town or DEP decides not to go ahead with this, is anyone making a commitment to continue to collect the urine from these households? Is it a cost into the indefinite future for the town, or is it a loss into the indefinite future for the participants? You just should be upfront about that in any agreement.
Well, can
There
I?
are companies that go to houses now in the North Shore and collect urine from people that are doing this. Mastech is going to be exploring what to do with this stuff, and they do things right on their site with, plants and things to see what they can do with it. Where it eventually goes, the devil is in the details. As I said earlier, there's a tremendous amount of detail to this project.
Right, I'm just saying that
Well,
I think,
I
And tonight's not the night.
I think
my
Steve-
point is to spend the money and the time on the phone, like any good engineer or purchasing agent or business person, and not on building a giant tank to collect something that it might turn out that no one wants.
Yeah, during the project, there needs to be an element that says, where does it go? Where does it go? That if, there's a couple divergent paths, but we can't wait to the end of 4 years and then say, so what are we gonna do with this stuff? So that needs to be factored in here, that the program will talk about, feasible and, much like we spend a lot of time looking at where we're gonna get rid of just wastewater effluent in general and, impacts and distribution, there's probably a project element that's missing here that we need to factor in. Thank you, Steve. You have more comments? You have a whole page of notes in front of you.
This is too far into the weeds for this, but we are not the National Science Foundation, in case you hadn't checked. If you write a grant to NSF or NIH or something like that, you almost have to have done the research ahead of time. You ask any of the scientists in town, including John. In the Mass Tech proposal, it says that they're going to do experiments, and that's why they want to keep the urine around. I'd like to have some idea what those are before I voted to recommend spending money on them.
Okay. I presume you don't have any questions, I can go right by you.
A lot of the folks have touched on things I was concerned about, phosphorus, that any possible redundancy with the 80,000 that's already been allocated, with the 177,000 in salaries and for consultants and project manager that are in this budget that's proposed. And I think Steve makes a very good point about knowing a little more about what the proposed experiments are. They may want the bulk urine to apply to vegetated plots. I don't know.
But then we get to ask the question, has that experiment already been done in Vermont? Why should Falmouth repeat it? But that's too far into the
Well,
weeds
you know,
for that.
different soils and so
But first you
forth,
have
but-
to know what the proposal is.
Right, different soils, et cetera. But, you know, I do, just back of the envelope, we're talking about 20,000 gallons or so of urine if we get 75 households with 2 people per household and so forth. So it's not a trivial amount of material, that's like 3 tank car loads.
Is that per year?
Yeah, that's my guess.
That's fine, I just tried,
1.5 liters per day.
I was trying to put whatever's underneath that slash line, you know?
Yeah.
Per year, okay.
But yeah, I think, you know, I think all the key issues have already been raised.
All right,
I just have a quick comment.
I did, let me add
Oh,
one,
oh,
let me add one other thing
okay, go ahead.
that
Norma.
I think might be useful to think about is rather than just going to domestic homes, if we could find some commercial or even municipal buildings to link up with where, you know, schools, et cetera,
Okay.
where we would be assured of a constant stream of inputs.
I was thinking certain bars in town.
Yeah, well, for sure.
Just a quick comment regarding Steve's concern. MassTech people have already said that the urine would be useful for them to test the new alternative systems that they're actually working on. So it's a challenge for them to always have enough to do the proper testing. So that's a majority of it's going to be used for that.
Right.
But then, which budget do you allocate it to?
They're providing a service. Who cares what they do with it afterwards, really? I mean, honestly.
No, the tank and the pasteurizer.
They have that.
They have
It's all in
Oh, it's
this.
in the
They've
budget, though.
included
all in
$30,000
here.
for a pickup truck to put the tank on to collect, and then they're gonna provide the tanks at their site because it's useful to them for the work that they do.
Right.
We need to go back to the hard proposal, Steve, and pick it apart a little bit,
Yeah.
okay? Because there are things in there what they wrote the first time, that they have since acquired tanks and pasteurizers and everything else.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's just-
I may have seen an earlier budget.
Kim and Hildy, I'll allow you guys to toss a coin for who wants to go first. Okay. And just a quick sort of vote from this board. I got notified by both the Green Center and the Pond Coalition today that they wanted to present slides as part of the comments. I informed them that usually if there's something that's going to be used, we like to get it ahead of time for the agenda. So I just, a vote to allow them to present material that you did not receive prior to the meeting.
That's
would be
fine with me.
Good for me.
I'll so move.
Second.
Okay, and all those in favor?
Yes.
Saying aye, okay, just.
Thank you very much. My name's Earl Barnhart. I'm with the Green Center. I have some information to show you that's new, and I have a few comments on what we heard just now. Earlier this year, this committee heard a report that said there was almost no information available on the collection of urine and the diversion of urine and the amounts that you could collect anywhere that you could find closer than Sweden. So we did some experiments at the Green Center, set up a small pilot project to divert urine from, where is it? 42 homes, volunteers, to divert urine for 2 months using cubies and storing them in 55-gallon drums. We got permission to do it this way from the Board of Health in Falmouth, and we did this experiment for 2 months. MasTech did the measurements of the volume. They took samples and had it tested in the county lab, and they are writing up a report of the amount of urine collected, the amount of nitrogen diverted, the amount of phosphorus diverted. So we did it with inexpensive, affordable equipment. There's all volunteer people to do this. We got volunteers right away, very enthusiastic volunteers. And the results of the report are very useful. I don't know how to make it go forward.
The right arrow.
There we go. The preliminary results, they are preliminary because MassTech only has 34 of the 42 participants so far. But using that information, they found that the average volume of urine collected per house over 2 months was 31 gallons. The average nitrogen collected per house, if extrapolated over a year, was 10 pounds of nitrogen per year from that house. If you calculate it by the per person, each person who diverted urine in this study for 2 months, if it were continued at the same rate for 1 year, they would divert 7.83 pounds of nitrogen per person in a year. That's roughly 80% of a year's urine from a person. So the amount and the percent collected was very, very high, higher than any of the other information that was reported in that report. Now, the important part about this study was that these are all volunteers. These people have flush toilets in their homes. They diverted this urine with flush toilets in their home already. We don't think it's necessary for you to have people remove all the toilets in their home. It will eliminate a large number of people who would want to do this. You do not have to assume and be skeptical that people would sneak out and use their flush toilets instead of the diverting toilets. The numbers you're going to get are what matter, and we think you'll get high numbers like this. People are really worried about the environment. People are willing to divert urine for environmental purposes. If DEP is skeptical that they will do that, we think you should have 3 categories in your study. You should have a control group, which is people who do nothing new. You should have a group of people who remove all the toilets and put in urine diverting so that the science shows what it would happen if you had only urine diverting toilets and you diverted all the urine. But have a third category of people who are volunteering to divert urine in their homes, keeping their flush toilets, to see what percent and how much that could be. Because in the long run, some of this study is for the DEP, and they probably require really a hard scientific study with control and complete removal. But you have hundreds and hundreds of homes on the Cape of people who would like to divert urine for the environmental reasons and not for the DEP study. So we think that DEP, if they had a third category of people who did this voluntarily and they found it was some average amount, they could give credit for that or give no credit and let people do that on their own apart from any DEP program or apart from TMDL studies. Oh, 2 more. The working group said we don't want to allow or should not allow composting toilets unless they're urine diverting, or we should not allow incinerating toilets. Well, you have to keep in mind here, the intention of this whole idea is to divert the nitrogen from the groundwater. You're not trying to collect urine, you're trying to divert the nitrogen. And a composting toilet diverts the nitrogen from the groundwater. An incinerating toilet diverts all nitrogen from the groundwater. Granted, they do not collect urine, but that's not the goal here. You're not trying to collect urine, you're trying to divert urine. And the last statement was that we should go to schools and sports centers because we can get more urine. Again, the point is you're not trying to collect urine, you're trying to divert it from the groundwater.
Earl, stay up there in case anybody has any questions for you. Any members of this committee have questions on what you just saw?
I'm impressed.
Yep.
It's impressive data. I'm wondering if you have phosphorus numbers to go with.
Yes. MassTech has done all of the measurement of the volume. They've taken the samples themselves. They've handled all the samples and sent them to the county lab. They're testing it for phosphorus and nitrogen. He has numbers on all the houses and all of the samples. He's got the last 8 or 6 samples within the last 2 weeks, and he's going to write a final report. Brian Horsley's writing this report. He's done all of the work. He's going to submit it to his supervisors, George Hofelder and Brian Baumgartel, to comment on, edit, and improve and approve his final report, and then we'll submit it to the public. and to you.
One question for you. So one of the items in looking at where we're trying to go forward has been, the occupancy issue. Like, you got one person extrapolated one year. Obviously, that's somebody there is there for the year. So of your participants, are they all year-round, full-time people?
We had self-reporting from the participants of what percent of the time they thought they were using their cubies to divert their urine. And that included them going off to Boston, or going on a vacation, or leaving home, or going off to work. They self-reported what percent of the time they thought they were using these cubies. And it was 81% of the time.
None of them are seasonal. These are not summer people. These are
We've
year-round.
only done it for 2 months starting in September.
Okay. Okay.
You'd have to run it for a whole year to find out what would happen if they go to Florida, or ask them if they're going to go to Florida.
Are you going to continue?
No. No, we only did this because there's no interest. This is the first time this is ever done in the United States, or in the world as far as we've been able to find out. These numbers don't exist anywhere. So we did it to get some idea. We were going to present it to town meeting. We did not get the opportunity to speak at town meeting. We would have presented this as evidence that this project is extremely important and probably would work well. The other thing that's not clear here is that if you apply this amount of urine diversion per home for 811 homes, which are going to be sewered in Great Pond, it removes more than the amount of nitrogen that the model shows would be removed by the sewers. So we want this to be calculated and analyzed, probably by MasTech, to see if that's true and to make a case for it.
I guess the only point I would make is you haven't really gotten rid of it. It's still there.
Oh,
And now the question is, what do you do with that urine afterwards?
okay. Well, MasTech is taking this urine from people who want to give it to them. MasTech is going to use it for their research purposes.
Right, but if you applied
On a
this
big
broadly.
scale, on a big scale, this project that you're proposing, 75 homes, is 150 people, times 100 gallons per person per year. You're up around 15,000 gallons in a year. You can put 10 people's urine on 1 acre of agricultural land as fertilizer. So you need 15 acres somewhere to put this on in a year. A MasTech can come up with 15 acres somewhere to put it if they want to simply use it as fertilizer on lawns, or golf courses, or on the Otis Air Force Base. They have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. I don't see that as a problem at all.
One more. Go ahead, Steve.
No, this is impressive, Earl, thank you. I think the remaining elephant in the room is acceptance by a substantial fraction of the population. I mean, enough to make it worthwhile. The only fallacy here is you have an incredibly self-selected group of experimental subjects. They're wonderful people who want to help the environment. Not everyone in Falmouth is wonderful.
Isn't Falmouth nice?
Used to be.
I think you're going to get yourself quoted in the paper, Steve.
I think Kim Kamart's going to ask to speak, and he has information about the interest in the public to participate in this program, because they've been coming to the Pond Group and us to ask to be involved.
Earl, don't step down yet. Thank you. You have a comment?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was going to open it up and see if there's
Yeah,
anybody in the
the,
population out there that want to ask a question.
Useful data, as you said. The Rich Earth Institute up in Brattleboro has been doing the same thing for about a dozen years, and they have coincidentally about a dozen participants. Again, volunteers. They do have a larger venue. I think it's a bar or sports center or something that's collecting all their urine. They've done this research, and they've been working for a dozen years anyway of what to do with this stuff once they've collected it and pasteurized it. And it's an ongoing effort. There have been other studies in Australia, the Kings Lake study that I quoted at some earlier meetings. So this is useful information, it's Falmouth-based information. Other folks are doing this, and, you know, we've got to remember, our goal as a committee here is DEP approval as an IA system to get TMDL credit and to clean up our estuaries and our ponds.
This is good stuff. Okay. Again, if somebody on the audience has a question, we'll go to our finance representative. Peter? Peter, just for the record, just,
Peter Hargrave.
thank you.
Precinct 9.
Thank you.
Speak at the microphone.
Yeah, can you,
Up there?
yeah, we're live on TV.
Oh, we So, thank you.
Live from
Thanks
New
for
York.
taking
I
the
don't know.
question, and thanks for your presentation.
We'll be
Earl.
live at 4 in the morning.
Peter Hargraves, Precinct 9. Earl brought up something that occurred to me as I was hearing the report from the working group, and I didn't hear an answer. I was waiting for the comments from the committee to cover it, and it seems like a pretty simple response, because I guess I agree that the purpose is to remove nitrogen and phosphorus from the watershed, from freshwater ponds, from the estuaries. And so what disqualifies incinerating toilets from the study? As also associated with that is the thought that I assume the $10,000 suggested is per household, or if it's $10,000 per toilet and a 3-toilet household wants to participate, they don't get $30,000. So even though incinerating toilets are $5,000 or $6,000, it might be more feasible to get a full home conversion simply without a lot of tearing up of the home and still accomplish the objective of removing nitrogen and phosphorus from the watershed. So I'm just curious, because you guys obviously in the working group had a very deep and long discussion on many items by the presentation. So why are incinerating toilets disqualified?
That was per the DEP. In our conversations with them, they specifically said that would not be eligible to be part of the study that we were proposing. That was not Falmouth Working Group, that was Department of Environmental Protection, Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Did they say why?
They felt it was contrary to the goals of what they wanted to see us accomplish and what we said we were trying to accomplish.
I suggest you go back to them and you tell them that an incinerating toilet will divert all the urine from a house. It will not go into the groundwater. And if they're interested in measuring the effluent coming out of a septic tank with a house with an incinerating toilet in it, they will find that there's no nitrogen in that water, and that that's the goal and that they should reconsider.
I think I know the answer to that. I'll explain it really quickly. I think DEP thinks like Underwriters Laboratories and other organizations like that. If you want to approve something, you think you need 50 of those things and not contaminated with 30 of something else and 5 of something else. That's just, it may not be valid in this case, but they want to show that that they've tested 50 of something that's pretty much all the same, and it had such and such results.
I would take the position, Earl, like this. The DEP's communicating with us, telling us what they will accept to get us to the point where they're accepting urine diversion as an IA technology. Getting the plumbing board approval of devices and getting them listed as urine diversion or something else is probably a slightly separate path from dealing with the DEP. That's the plumbing board issue. So I don't think we're gonna give up on trying to get as many devices approved by the plumbing board and designated as urine diversion. But I think for the purposes of the study that we're trying to do, taking on the DEP over incinerating toilets may be not a productive use of the time and energy and the dollars we have available to us.
Okay, I'd like to note that the Mass Plumbing Board approves incinerating toilets by right as the only toilet in a home already.
I know that, yeah. Thank you. Okay, comments from the audience. We had one already. Gentleman in the back, just stand up and identify yourself and speak in the microphone. Oh, how are you, sir? Well. Always good to see you.
Malcolm Donald, in Precinct 6. Like to address a couple of questions, a couple of comments. How are people in in a service area with urine diversion encouraged to hook up? How do you encourage people in a sewer area to hook up?
I believe the first portion of the project, the 80-some-odd thousand, has an allowance or a budget for a program for outreach and engagement with folks that would be interested in the study.
Right, but the question was, someone said, well, how do you get people, how do you encourage people to get, to hook up or to participate in this? If you were to install a urine diversion system, you could mandate that people had to hook up. Just like you mandate people in a sewer area that they have to hook up. Is that?
I think the concept is that you would know, I don't think anyone here would ever say that you mandate a whole area has to use urine diversion. But you might mandate that they have to use some form of IA. And if DEP approved the certain urine diversion as an IA, that would be their choice. And Earl would argue that they'd be crazy not to do urine diversion because they'd save $20,000 or more. But that would be their choice.
Well, if you have you're putting it you want to put a sewer area in the Article 6 on town meeting that covered the expansion of the sewer area in the peninsula of Acapesket. You're gonna force everybody in that area to hook up to the sewer, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what's the difference between that?
There isn't. So let me walk you through this so you understand where we're at. This is a study to try to get urine diversion approved as an IA system.
Correct.
We're doing watershed permits for 14 watersheds over the next period of time. Not next month, but over the next couple of years. As we do those watershed permits, and I'm gonna just stay on Great Pond right now, because that's the one we've been looking at a little bit, okay? We're gonna turn around as a board of community, Board of Health, and say, within the upper portion of the Great Pond watershed, beyond the area that we intend to put sewers in, of the 5,000 some odd homes that are in that area, maybe 2,500 of them will have to install an IA at some point over a 20-year period. The rules about who will have to do it, how fast, how soon, are gonna be hammered out. But once that decision's made, that a certain number of homes have to put in an IA, which is what's inside the whole watershed permit program right now. Right now, there are 2 approved systems that a homeowner could put in, okay? We're trying to create a 3rd approved system they could put in. So the mandate will come down at some point through the Board of Health, most likely, because that's where the regulations lie, saying, here's a map, and everybody inside this zone has X period of time to put in an IA system. And every 5 years, we're gonna have to tell them how many people have hooked up to the IA, and if we're gonna make the end of the day to have enough people hooked up. So that's where the mandate will come in, okay? Right?
Okay, yeah. Second item, second comment that was made, what do you do with the urine? You can make fertilizer out of it. Now, and then also, there was a comment made that nobody's doing this in the country. Well, there's at least one system, if not many, and it's out in Oregon, and the engineering staff that designed that system put together a proposal to address the sewer area that was covered in Article 6. And the total bottom line was 1/3 of the cost of that sewer system.
Yeah, I'm not gonna entertain conversation around Article 6 right now.
Okay.
We have a
Well,
proposal.
what I'm trying to
We have
say
a
is
proposal in
that-
front of us to do a study to get to the point where we can get urine diversion approved as an IA, So if you want to talk to that proposal to get a urine diversion approved as an IA, you'll be on top of it.
Okay, and then the last point is who's going to pick it up? There's a company out of north of Boston that's called Wasted, and they pick up urine up in the Boston area, and they're coming down here, and they're very interested in the urine supply here.
Yep. We are seeing interest. The fact that we continue to go forward with this project and stuff, we're getting more and more folks showing their interest to it, okay? Thank you. All right. Huh?
What's the time? What are we gonna go?
We're gonna be out here by 6:30.
6:30.
4:30, 5:30, it's 2 hours. We're always here for 2 hours. I'm gonna hold off on you momentarily, Kim. This lady over here, you just need to stand up and identify yourself again.
Hi, I'm Laura Lubin, Mayor's Pond. A quick question, clarification. So are we set, from the working group, that obviously we're trying to get IA approval for urine diversion. Are you saying during the pilot project, people, let's say, and I think it's not a fair assumption to say if you have 3 toilets, it's no big deal. It is a big deal to replace them all. And are we saying that we're gonna ask people to replace all their toilets before we know if they're going to get a waiver as an IA? Which means those people are saying, you're asking people to, if I'm understanding you correctly, have to change all of them before they know if it's even going to be accepted, so that they're left in a position where they could invest $20,000, including incinerating toilets, just want to put another bid in for those, and then find out they have to put in a $40,000 septic. So would you clarify that for me?
You're correct.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, again, I'm back to, we're not necessarily trying to get the largest, broadest group of people to participate. We're trying to get 50 people that can agree to the rules that we're gonna lay out there.
I understand.
Which is gonna be, so some people that might wanna do this, have 3 toilets, will say, it's not for me. Somebody else with 2 toilets may say it's for me because I'm only to do 2. So, at the end of the day, and just to try to help you with this, we will have to follow along with some things the DEP does or doesn't say. And when we were dealing around with the composting toilet issue, one of the underlying background items that surfaced was, people could go down the composting toilet path, but at the end of the day, they still had to have a Title V system, which was kind of a disincentive to the number of people participating. So we're trying to be as clear as we can up front what the limitations are for the participants in this program. And to the extent that somebody really wants to do this, we're trying to, again, gonna try to work through if you disconnect things, but we're just trying to get through this 3-year data collection to get the IAs approved. And then I think we got a lot more ability to set rules or, use local things so that somebody who couldn't participate the first time because there are too many bathrooms can now get into it because it will work that way. So yes, right now we're going down the path of, if you're in, you've got to be all in, not just part of them in. That's the recommendation, and
I understand
we'll
what
pick
you're
this back
saying.
up on the 6th again and kick it around. The purpose to have this is to hear from people, sort of the hot buttons, the hot spots, okay?
Well, thanks for clarifying that.
I don't think that's accurate.
I just, only so, because I want to get Kim to get up here and give his presentation. And as I said, we can all roll back here on the 6th, okay? But this meeting will end at 6:30, and we do have a couple more items on it. So I do want to keep it moving.
Steve, if I could just make a quick comment in between while he's getting ready?
Go right ahead.
Doug Brown, Select Board. I don't think anybody will have to remove their fixtures.
No.
I think that's what the lady was asking, if she's gonna have to remove fixtures later.
Well, yeah,
Did I understand that right?
Can we make it clear that what we're talking about here is a voluntary program where some funding agency is going to subsidize fixture swap out, whatever form it takes. But at this stage of the game, it's purely voluntary. No one's going to be knocking on your doors saying you haven't converted. I think that's a very important point. And what conversions occur will be subsidized. That's our plan.
And permanent if they want to.
And yeah, if they want it, well, yeah, there's a lot more.
Once we get the IA approvals, they can stay in.
Yep.
Okay, so as I've been thinking about this project.
Kim, just identify yourself.
Kim Combart from the Falmouth Pond Coalition, Precinct 8. So I've been thinking about this project, and I've been thinking about other products that are good for the planet that many of us use. My wife and I had solar panels installed in our house. We had AC split system installed in our house. We're sort of in the market for an electric car. And so I thought about this, and I've been thinking about the sort of, rules that are being talked about. So, many of us have these mini split systems. We received a federal tax credit. We got a federal tax credit for this effective technology. We get a state rebate for this effective technology that's good for the planet. We get rebates for electric cars and trucks for effective technologies. Here's a Wolfsman Echo Flush toilet. This is one I think Ed was referring to. This is a very nice toilet. It's an effective technology. That's the bowl. This is the Laufin, the wall-mounted one that Ed was talking about. This is and we're in discussion with them about the availability of this. I think we're going to be able to get these. That's the bowl. This is a Cinderella urinal.
Kim, you're doing outreach on urine diversion. You're not
No.
talking to the proposal yet.
No, I am. And here's what I want to talk about. Here's another effective technology. Here's people hauling away the urine. What I'm saying is, mini splits, electric vehicles, solar panels, these are effective technologies. They conserve energy, reduce use of fossil fuels, greenhouse gases. They're eligible for tax credits. The owner is not required to use the product. You don't have to use your electric car to get your rebate. You don't have to use your AC split system to get your rebate. You don't have to use your solar panels. You can use whatever you want. No one's telling you have to only use that car, only use that form of heat in your house or air conditioning in your house. The owner can use whatever technology they want. They can keep that electric car they bought in the garage for 2 years. They still got the rebate. But when we're talking about urine diversion toilets and urinals, it's an effective technology. It's got lots of benefits. There's no tax credit for it. But what we're saying is you might be required to use that product and only that product to receive a financial subsidy. We're saying that you may be prohibited from using an alternative technology to receive the subsidy. So I guess I would like to see us be thinking about not just which products, this issue of having to replace all the appliances in your house because there's a concern that you may not use them or you're not going to get good data. This point that was raised here, there's two goals here. One is to get DEP approval. Another is to remove as much nitrogen, get as many people in this town doing urine diversion as possible. And I believe, and I firmly believe, that a less restrictive set of rules here about what people are required to do, and the $10,000 incentive, which is great, and it's per household. It's not per appliance, it's per household. I think we have the opportunity here to get a lot of people to use these very nice appliances that I showed and be doing urine diversion, get into the practice of doing urine diversion. So I would like to see, and I liked Earl's suggestion a lot, the 3 different groups.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. Every pound of nitrogen diverted from our waters reduces the amount of nitrogen that's going to enter our groundwater and make it into our ponds or estuaries and our bays. I think we've got to keep our eye on that ball. Maybe this does mean some pushback. To say DEP told us we can't use, a Cinderella incinerating toilet. It's an approved product in Massachusetts. They're being installed, and it's legal. It's approved. It incinerates all of the nitrogen, all of the urine and feces. So it's a urine diversion product. Finally, I would say consideration should definitely be given, and I was glad to hear that, to permitting residents from other towns, Sandwich, Mashpee, and Bourne, to participate. Their town has to pay their way, or they have to pay their way personally. Totally agree with that. And lastly, I'll just say I agree with providing subsidies in the form of forgivable loan. And then the more appliances that we allow people to use, the more different kinds of appliances we allow people to use, the better. We want to, what was great about Hilda and Earl's experiment, even though it was small and was cubies, there were no rules that you had to only use that. There was no rules that you had to be home a certain amount of time. You had to have a certain lifestyle. We got a representative sample of people in Falmouth who do spend half the year in Florida. Some work at home, some don't. Some use the UD appliance all the time, some don't. A representative sample is going to show that we are removing massive amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus from our waters. We're diverting them. People aren't going to, my wife and I have been using the QB for 2.5, 3 months now. I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop. I look at that QB and I think, am I going to go pee in the toilet? That's going to go into the groundwater. I just don't want to. There's a certain feeling of, I'll call it, virtue. I've joked with Amy about this virtuous cycle. There's a certain virtue people have in driving an electric car, in putting solar panels on your house, in having an AC split system, in doing urine diversion. And I think we've got to do everything we can to encourage people to do this and not restrict people and not make them tear out every appliance in their house. No one told me that I have to lock up my furnace. I can't use my furnace if I get an AC split system. No one told me I had to disable my furnace or disable my other car if I'm going to get a rebate on an electric car. So that's all I have to say. The last thing I'll say is I thank you all. I really thank you all, and I thank Doug and Matt and George, who's not here, for the hours and hours you're putting into this. I really appreciate it. On behalf of all of us, we really appreciate it, and we're glad this is on the agenda.
I'm going to take one more.
Kristen, should I just?
No, I'm going to let one more person speak to this now. We've had quite a bit of conversation, and it's going to be Matt Patrick, because he's been on the committee, and he had his hand up, and so.
Matt Patrick, Precinct 7. I just wanted to say that I don't think we should ask people to disable the remaining toilets. That really wasn't fully discussed amongst the committee, and it kind of was suggested later on. Looking at the numbers, 29% of the people in the area that we're going after will have one toilet, one bathroom. They're more likely to be our target audience than people who have 2 or 3 bathrooms. They're more likely to participate. And I only want to remind you about the original program. We had, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had probably 40 or 50 people who wanted to participate in that.
Over 100 when we started.
Over 100. Then they found out oh, well, you're going to have to take out your other toilets, or disable them, whatever. Actually, I don't think they could disable them. I think it was everything had to be a conversion. I did that in my house. I replaced 3 toilets with 3 urine diverting toilets, and I don't regret it. But I think it really cut back on the number of participants in that program till a point where we had fewer than 15, I'm guessing. So I think we got to remember that before we start putting limitations on this program. I think we will be able to get some interesting data if you have one urine diverting toilet and another one in the house that might get used sometime, but I think we can put them in a subset and divine information from that subset. So that's my point. I'm glad the town's going forward with this. I think it's due and about due, and I really hope we don't limit the number of participants by putting too many restrictions on it. Thank you.
I'll make one last comment while you're up there, if I can. I'm an optimist by nature. So the fact that we've got some seed money to try to recruit people into this program, I think there's some lessons learned from the last time around, Matt. I would hope that, 5 or 6 months from now, we have 300 people that want to participate. And within those 300 people, we can start to screen those people that are a best fit for getting some grant money, not stretching ourselves to try to, desperately fit 75 people in. So I don't know that we should be dealing up, we have to kick this around, we'll pick it up again, whether we should be dealing in some absolutes, but I think like any good program, you say, if you meet these criteria, you're gonna go to the top of the list for getting in the program. And then you get to a point where you say, oh, well, we need 10 more homes, and now we're down to the three bedrooms, and people don't want to disconnect. What do we do? But let's go hard at it, do the thing we're asking to do, try to find, 75 people that best fit what will cause us the least amount of having to arm wrestle with the DEP, because every time I've arm wrestled with the DEP, my arms get tired and I usually don't get what I want.
Well, I can agree with that. You prioritize the people who will convert all their...
I'm not looking for 75 people that want to be in this program. I'm looking for 300, and we then narrow down the best 75.
Okay, but remember, if you don't end up with, 300 optimists, you may end up with
Kim is
fewer than we need.
Kim is very persuasive. My money's on Kim.
He is indeed. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. I want to move on. Just a quick review with everybody on the committee. We will be out of here at 6:30. So I want to ask Kristen on the discussion on Bourne's Pond watershed. Do you think we can get through it in 15 or 20 minutes, or should I push it to December 6th? I want to do.
John and I had a call about it earlier.
I want to do justice to it. I don't want to shortchange.
I think there's a lot there.
Huh?
Is this gonna be a one-shot deal, or are we gonna get another crack at this?
So
Starting it now and then finishing it.
That's what I'm asking.
We could, that's what I'm just checking. The exercise here is to raise the level of education of this board on each of the watersheds, okay? We're going to file notice of intents, and then, Amy or somebody, somebody working for or with Amy will help to draft scopes of work for the watershed plans so that we can hire somebody to actually put together the plans. But a couple times we've touched upon the global watershed plans. Various board members have wanted to go into a specific watershed piece.
I think that's good. I guess, that might take more than one.
Now, people bring up problems and they fix them next time.
With that, then, let's go into it, and I'll call what else do we have on here? I'm gonna call it, I'll give you 10 minutes to get started. How's that? Well, either that or we push off reports of members and vote minutes. And while she's coming to the podium, I'm a little bit remiss in not thanking everybody who's on this committee for taking up the challenge and reaching out to town meeting members and asking them for their support on Article 6. You know, every vote counted. We got more than enough votes, but it was a real team effort. And if I didn't thank any one of you individually along the way, I'm thanking you now for everything that we did to get that to a point. And we have an Academy Award nomination. We hope that Amy is out there in Hollywood accepting it for the stellar performance she did in, you know, her PowerPoint presentation. From behind the scenes, I can tell you that there were multiple iterations of that presentation that Amy went through before she got to the one she liked.
Did you just cut into my 10 minutes?
No.
No, it's just starting now. Set a timer, somebody.
Kristen Rathjen, Science Wares. So I will try and abbreviate some of the background information, but I think it's important, especially for the more recent members, to have it. So what I did with this is kind of to set up the structure for what the individual watershed planning may look like. What kind of elements and what kind of considerations can be included as you start to look at it. So this is the heat map from the MEP, where it's showing your higher level of nitrogen concentrations in the upper reaches of the estuaries. For background, Bourne's Pond has 3 sub-embayments, and 2 of those sub-embayments, Bourne's Brook and the main Bourne's Pond, are divided into 2 sub-watersheds, and that's by travel time, so greater than 10 years and less than 10 years. The MEP reports, when they do their threshold, concentration, load calculations, are divided by sub-embayments. So Bourne's Pond has threshold load concentrations for each of those sub-embayments. Historically, the town planning effort has looked at the combined total of all of the sub-embayments and gone at planning from a perspective combined. So these numbers are from 2 different MEP tables. They have the threshold daily load for each of the sub-embayments, the present load. For Bourne's Pond, the MEP present is 2005, and then the build-out load. Build-out being the assessor's data and zoning regulations from the time of MEP. So if everything that was able to be developed under the standard zoning regulations was developed, that's what the load would look like. So to get to your load removals, you take the difference of the 2 and multiply it to get an annual basis. So this 4,162, when we look and we present that bar graph of all 14 estuaries in town that have the nitrogen removals, that 4,162, that's the number we've been looking at. But you can see all of the different sub-embayment numbers for the present load and then the build-out load. So build-out load is much higher than what's been planned for. An important thing to note in the watershed permit regulations, if your watershed plan does not address build-out or growth, then the new construction Title V upgrade mandates do kick in. So this is something that the town has to consider how they do their plans, how to address build-out. Bourne's Pond was part of the 2013 South Coast CWMP and the 2019 Notice of Project Change update. This is the table from the 2019 update, which has the itemized implementations that were planned, including fertilizer, stormwater, aquaculture, and inlet widening. Since the update, we don't tend to include shellfish denitrification as a number in the equation anymore because it hasn't fully been accepted as a valid credit by DEP. So that has kind of been removed from the equation. We also have further refined aquaculture numbers with the results of the demonstration projects, the surveys that Chuck and Marine and Environmental Services did to define potential acreage areas in each of the watersheds. So what I did was I took these updated numbers and I've taken things from previous planning efforts and ideas that have been kicked around, and I put together a couple of scenarios looking at different elements from these things and how they might work in a plan. None of these plans are meant to be a final plan. They're meant to look at different tactics for how to move forward with the watershed plan. So the first scenario, I took the proposed 300-foot IA boundary. So 300 feet around the estuary, that's all of these little red dots. Previously, when we do calculations, we were looking at averages, average water use, be it for the watershed, be it for bigger areas. For this, I went into the Cape Cod Commission database, which has average water use for individual homes. For each parcel, whether it's developed or not, took that number and converted it to a nitrogen load using the standard methodology of consumptive water use. So 90% of the water that's used returns as wastewater. Then applying the standard 35 milligram per liter effluent septic system, septic tank, because that's what the MEP model was built on. So that makes all of the numbers comparable when looking at the plan. The yellow polygons, those are the areas that MES determined were potential shellfish areas. And these pink, as part of the planning, Wacoit has always had a potential for sewering. If you're running your sewer line across 28, you would potentially connect all of those parcels. So if you look at it itemized, not only from a combined watershed, so that's your 4162, but breaking it out by sub-embayments and what each of those implementation means in those sub-embayments. So the Cape Cod Commission database has, for each of those parcels, what sub-watershed it falls in. So using that to find data, I'm not choosing this parcel is maybe 50% over this line. I'm using what has already been defined for all of that. One big caveat is the build-out number here. So this build-out number for the 300-foot boundary is specifically for those parcels. So if that's one way to address build-out, those parcels would need to be built out. So growth and development can occur in other portions of the watershed, and if these never see growth and you don't update the system, you may not be accounting for actual build-out. So that's something to consider with all of that. So with this scenario, you meet the present target load for the combined for the watershed, but you don't meet build-out. But when you look at it from the sub-embayment perspective.
Come back one slide, if you will. So you're using the 10 milligram per liter
Yes,
target value.
for the IAs, yes. The 10 milligrams per liter, and the load reduction is beyond Title V. So Title V is assumed to remove 25% of the nitrogen. So this is beyond that 25% that's
Okay.
from the existing systems. So if you look at it from what kind of actual percent reduction you see in each of those sub-embayments, you can see that Israel's Cove doesn't come close to what the MEP-defined nitrogen reduction requirement is. I have Bourne's Brook as yellow. There is a line within the watershed permit regulations. The caveat that if you can't meet your TMDLs within 20 years, if you can show reasonable progress, being 75%. So as a first shot, if this was something going forward, you're meeting that 75% to allow further adaptive management.
But we have to meet it in each of the sub-abatements, or we just have to meet it at the
We don't know.
Sentinel station?
We don't know.
We don't
yet.
know.
We don't know yet.
Sounds like a good thing to find out.
That would be a Brian House question. But the MEP had all of those. I got a whole list of questions for him.
Dig 'em up.
The MEP has those threshold concentrations laid out for each of the sub-embayments, presumably what you need to get the Sentinel station to its target concentration. So that's one of the questions, and I think I brought that up in the narrative of, can you do basically nitrogen trading within different sub-embayments? Where does that get you? The next scenario I looked at, I took the first contingency from the CWMP, which was for sewering the Fisherman's Cove area. And based on the last scenario where Israel's Cove didn't even come close to its nitrogen reduction requirement, I took that and I made it a septic improvement area. Previously, I've defined those as somewhere where septics will need to be upgraded, be it IA, be it sewer, something will have to be done there. So for this exercise, again, looking at it from the conservative 10 milligram per liter IA upgrade. So the line items for those, again, we meet present nitrogen removal requirements. We only got a little bit better on the build-out numbers. When you look at what it looks like, we did better in Israel's Cove, and you got a little bit more from Bourne's Pond, which you didn't need. So a third scenario to look at, how do you take those elements, hit build-out, and account for different things? Obviously, there's many different things you can do. You can run a scenario where you sewer Israel's Cove. You can run where you put IAs further up here in Bourne's Brook. Here was a potential expansion of the potential sewer area. Because if you think back to the heat map, the most impaired area was right here at the head of the estuary. So it would make sense to put implementations closer to where your highest impairment is. So line items for that, your total, looking at the combined for the watershed, you're well above it. That's not a bad thing, because if you look at shellfish, this is a pretty big number. So another caveat with all of this is all of these shellfish areas, the majority of them, are right down near the inlet. So what does that actually mean? From our pilot projects, we have an idea of what oysters can do. Those pilot projects are further up in the estuary. If you're removing 880 kilograms and it's all coming right here, is it all just flushing right out? What kind of benefit do you actually have further up in the estuary for that? Shellfish also have, it's a biological component. They could be susceptible to disease, closures, all kinds of things. So having a built-in contingency for that might not be a bad idea. So that's looking at your percent removals. So under this scenario, you've met and exceeded for 2 of those 3 sub-embayments, but Israel's Cove still hasn't met its target. So the third caveat with Bourne's Pond, because it's special and it's gonna have inlet widening, the way the MEP and subsequent tech memos for the inlet widening modeled what the nitrogen reduction benefit from that will be, is it showed it as a reduction of concentration at the monitoring stations, because you're allowing lower concentration water from Vineyard Sound to come in. So they, in the black box model of the MEP, ran everything back through and came up with, it was almost a 2,000 kilogram reduction, but only from the main sub-watershed, only from Bourne's Pond. They show lower concentrations at the monitoring station in Israel's Cove, but they don't have any actual tangible load removal associated with it from there. So what the inlet widening impact would actually have on Israel's Cove is unclear. But the MEP and the tech memo don't have the load associated with it. So when you come to submit your watershed plan to the state, that all we can do is say, here's the modeling that's been done, and this is where the load reductions are documented to occur. So that's basically the fast version of that.
Any questions from the board? We're going to go right to left this time.
Oh, okay.
Left to right.
Start with-
Okay, yeah, so I, this is good because I'm starting to sense what the process of looking at these is gonna be. And then I assume our goal will be to choose or rank them or do something.
Figure out
so
what
that we
elements
can
make
say
sense.
to Board of Selectmen or whoever's gonna put the final stamp on these, hey, we think C is best, A is next, and are there going to be any kind of crude cost estimates for these various scenarios?
So that's the next step. That's something that needs to be considered. John and I had a conversation this morning about it. That all plays into it. Once you start to hone in on what elements you think make the most sense and implementations where, then starting to look at your cost benefit of what it means. Does the septic improvement area, is it cheaper in the long run and more cost effective to sewer less homes to meet your target there? That's all things that will need to be taken into consideration as those plans are developed.
The one other question I have is, I know your build-out scenarios are based on current zoning, and as we've already seen, their current zoning may not limit development within the watersheds. I would love to see DEP say, hey, state requirements are that we cannot exceed X load for these 40B type projects that
Right.
come up.
The way it's defined in the watershed permit regulations is basically if you have MEP build out, that is still what's accepted. They want you to do a 20-year growth projection from the present load, and also build out. So,
But I almost view this whole issue as having, for many years, sat on the zoning board and been frustrated by the inability to impose regulations on 40B projects, that they restrict their, or that they improve their waste treatment or whatever, that it would be nice to solicit some support from the state in order to do that. And I just wonder.
You might need special legislation, and you might need it also to mandate the 10%, because right now it's 19.
In the Title V regulations, the DEP defines best available nitrogen reducing technology as 10 milligrams per liter. And they say if there are no systems in that category, you default to next highest. So physically, right now, it's 19. The 10 is coming. Rumor has it Nitro is close to getting approval for 10. So by the time this goes in place, we could be there.
So, if I can, we're not trying to write the plan today. What you've
No, I
just-
get that.
No, what you've just done is good. Is the exercise here is to identify things that, when we start writing scopes of work, to do these plans, need to be in there. So what I'm hearing, and I think, is, on the parcels that can be developed or redeveloped in a given watershed, there's basically two scenarios that whoever does that work is going to have to do. One is going to have to say, what if it follows local zoning? What does that look like in terms of impact and need to mitigate? And what if it is allowed to continue to go down the 40B path? What does that mean? And what's that going to be to mitigate? So that will help, that would then articulate to a step in that process of the watershed permits of saying we want to push this other special regulation or law, okay? But I think it helps to create a more powerful case of a benefit, an offset need or whatever associated with 40Bs inside these watersheds.
I guess that's
In
all
the
I'm
remaining
arguing
minutes,
is that.
let's collect as many different ideas from the board of what you and Kristen need to come up with by the next meeting or the meeting after that, right? If something missing.
We're gonna put this back on the agenda for December 6th. Okay, so everybody has this in front of them to think about it for a little bit. And then we can get other items.
Can I just say something real quickly? Slide, the fourth slide, table 11.5. It would, you were just there, right. For instance, the fertilizer bylaw is already in place. Peter can tell us how far along our stormwater management is like in that area. Aquaculture, I would bet it'd be at least 5 years before we see substantial expansion of that. Denitrification's already been struck from the list. Inlet widening, Peter, I think is going to start next year. So if it would help, I think, long-term planning, thinking strategically, if we had some sort of timelines plugged into a table like this, so we could have an idea when these different things might come into play. And it would also give us an idea if we were going to have to go and plead our case with the state or some higher-ups, how immediately we need to address that issue.
Did you have your hand up, John?
We were working this way, but it's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Probably because I'm a rookie at this whole thing, but looking at the map, the most impaired part of Bourne's Pond is the northernmost extreme.
Yep.
And yet, it seems like all of the planning is to the left and right of that, but not due north of that. What is due north of that? And it seems to me intuitively that feeder streams north of that most impaired portion are areas we should be looking at, because some of the stuff's probably flowing from further north, and why do we not look at that?
So that's, what's north of that is Bourne's Brook. That's what's coming in, and that's all of this. So along Bourne's Brook itself, and this map doesn't go far up, there's a lot of undeveloped land. Part of why your nitrogen concentration is so high, it's reduced flushing.
Of course.
You're not getting the circulation up there, and then you have all of this development right here that's coming in to that head, and you're getting minimal circulation up here, so your retention time's higher up there.
One other question, did Mass Estuaries give any direction as to what should be the first priorities in addressing this? What part of that embayment?
Wastewater.
Well, yes, but geographically, did they say, hey, look, hit that northernmost extreme first?
No,
So
That's
this
not-
is
that's
what
not
they
what they
give
did.
you.
They did not, okay.
They give you
Yep.
the thresholds for each of
They just-
those
they just- yeah.
areas
Yep, okay.
and say,
Yeah.
figure it out
Right.
of how to get your sentinel station, so this is the sentinel station, how you get that, because the idea is, once this sentinel station is meeting its target concentration, the estuary should be in decent shape.
We'll see.
That's the idea.
According to them.
That's the idea.
But my understanding is that they have, that the most recent DEP guidance has said we do not have to go strictly with the Sentinel Station criteria. Do I have that wrong?
I don't know that I heard that go by.
They have, inside the watershed stuff, there is a little tidbit that says if you can make it better and show that it's better, you're done.
Based on load reduction.
No, that
Based
same
on
little.
eelgrass,
Eelgrass,
benthic
other things.
habitat.
But that same little section says, if you do everything to knock the nitrogen down, and you don't get the eelgrass back, and you don't get the bugs back, and you don't get the fish back, you gotta keep doing more. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't paragraph.
So they,
Isn't it also true that if you made the Sentinel Station fine, but you did nothing to address the terrible conditions in the upper part of the estuary, that would be politically unacceptable and sort of morally unacceptable?
All right, I'm gonna wrap up Bourne's Pond. Everybody's got the stuff in front of them. Think about it. Think about it to, what do we wanna make sure gets considered as we're putting together scopes of work, or, like, good thing about, like, how do you handle development, there are different variables in that. Item 6 is set December meeting dates. Mark your calendar for December 6th, which is soon. We're gonna do a little follow-up. We're not gonna do an estuary at that time, but, if anybody's got a favorite estuary and they'd like to tell Kristen about it, I mean, I'm open to whatever.
Something
Unless you've got one you'd
Cancun,
like her to do this for next,
mid-December.
okay?
Do I have to go in person and
Yes.
scope it out?
Okay? And then, on December 20th, we're having our annual, Christmas party. Everybody's gotta wear their ugly sweater, okay?
December 20th?
December 20th, yep. Okay?
Where will?
And let me know what you're gonna be bringing for whether you're gonna be bringing the punch or the fruit cake, or what you're gonna be bringing, okay?
I'll be bringing the torches and the pitchforks.
Is that also at 4:30?
Yeah, they're both, I believe, Kristen, they're both gonna be 4:30 here, as best we know, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll confirm tomorrow in town hall, and I will send out calendar invites as appropriate.
Unless somebody's got something absolutely important, because we're gonna be back here on the 6th. I'm gonna waive reports of members and staff till the 6th,
Right.
okay? The minutes of the prior meeting, Tom, you've read them?
I read them. Other people, I hope, have read them.
I've read them.
Yep. And so I'm going to move that they be accepted as presently presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, by saying aye. Aye. Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, we got another 20 seconds. Somebody better second it,
Wow.
Second.
okay? Moved and seconded, no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye, aye. Thank you, everybody.
Steve.
That's good.